Good evening. I'd like to call the annual meeting of the town of Farmington to order. I want to mention that the copies of the resolution are located outside the door by the entrance as you come in. Also, the warning for tonight's meeting was published in the Hartford Courant on April 5th, 2022, and are also located outside the door by the entrance when you came in. At this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to waive the reading of the warning for the minutes. Oh, yeah, second. Thank you. And then all in favor by a voice vote? Aye. Those against? Okay, so the motion passes. And I'd like to also call for a motion for a nomination for moderator for tonight's meeting.
Make a motion to appoint Fiscal as moderator.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Kat. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Welcome, Chris.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for voting me enthusiastically in as moderator this evening. Before we talk about procedure, I think we really should begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Our flag is in this dark corner over here. Mr. Mayor, would you lead us? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So let's talk about procedure for this evening. Your decision tonight on the town's operating budget for 2022-2023 is not final until approved or rejected by the voters at the polls on April 28, 2022. Please note that the voters in that referendum on that date cannot change the budget. You can simply vote yes or no. If a majority of those on April 28th reject the budget with a 15% of the electors participating, the town council recommends a second budget, which must be lower than the budget rejected at the referendum. It goes to a second town meeting and a second referendum. If the second recommended budget is rejected at the referendum, the council shall meet and shall adopt a budget for the upcoming fiscal year, which shall be lower than the second recommended budget. In this town meeting, we may increase, decrease, or authorize an additional appropriation that is not in the recommended budget presented tonight. That is provided we have at least two-thirds majority of the voters and that there are at least 300 voters on such item. And based on my trading as moderator, I would submit that we do not have 300 voters this evening. So I'm not going to go into any more detail about how that is going to occur in terms of modifying the proposed budget. We do have 3 items on the agenda tonight. First and foremost, the town report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021 be approved. Second, that the budget recommended by the town council for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2022 be approved. And third, to consider and act upon any other business which may properly come before said meeting. We consider each agenda item separately. To place each of these items before you, I'll call for a motion and a second. I'll then ask for the appropriate town officials to describe the item for informational purposes. I'm happy to recognize anyone who wishes to speak on the motion, that particular motion before us. I ask that you go to one of the microphones where and over here, they're in the aisles, as you can see. State your name and your address for the record. I ask you to keep your comments to the agenda topic and to present them as briefly as possible. If you have a question, please direct the question to me as moderator and indicate whom you would like to answer it. Please confine your question to the topic under discussion. We're not going to enter into a debate this evening. If the comment or question is not germane to the topic at issue, I have the discretion to rule it out of order. If a number of speakers wish to be recognized, I may set a time limit. However, I don't think that that will be a issue this evening. I will call for a motion to adjourn the meeting to a referendum to be held at the regular polling places on April 28th, 2022, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. So that's our procedure for this evening and our general rules. Motion number one, may I have a motion to move the first item contained in the warning that the town report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021 be approved. A motion? Motion, great. And a second? So we have a second. Any comments and questions from the audience? Comments, questions? Comments, questions? Last call. Questions, comments? All those in favor of approving the town report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Motion two. May I have a motion to move the second item contained in the warning that the budget recommended by the town council for the fiscal year commencing July 1, 2023 be approved? Do we have a motion? We can't go home until someone makes a motion. Help me out. Yes, a motion and a second. Anyone on a second over here? Great, thanks. So I now will call upon CJ Thomas, Chair of the Town Council, Kathleen Blonsky, Town Manager, Kathleen Greeter, Superintendent of Schools, to begin the presentations, not all at once, I don't believe. I think the Town Manager is first, so I'll step down and come back in a few minutes. Oh, CJ Thomas, okay, thank you.
We'd speed things up if we all went at once, but a little tougher to understand us. I would like to welcome you all to the annual town meeting. This meeting is being held in the hundreds-year-old tradition of New England towns and villages. So you're part of a long-standing history here. So congratulations. The intent is to bring the community together and discuss our fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. The decisions the council made pertaining to this budget were based on several factors. The town strategic plan, the 7-year capital plan, the long-term financial forecasts, and the current economic climate. The town council adopted this budget unanimously, and our overall goal is to maintain excellent services while being fiscally responsible and proactively planning for the future needs of our town. Prior to the creation of this budget, it went through several reviews and adjustments. In January, department requests started coming into the town manager's office for reviews and adjustments. As January 11th, 2022, at our town council meeting, the council set an expenditure target of no more than 2.75% increase for both the town and the Board of Education. The budget target was slightly more conservative than our long-term financial forecast of 3%, but considering the economic uncertainties, the town council felt that this was an appropriate starting point. The town manager decreased her department requests by $751,717, which reduced the overall budget increase from 5.1% to 2.74% prior to presenting it to the council. The Board of Education forwarded their request for 2.99% increase on February 8th. The town manager's capital improvement plan and recommended budget includes the Board of Education expenditures. A public hearing was held at the town manager's proposed 7-year capital improvement plan on February 22nd of 2022. A public hearing was held on the town manager's recommended operating budget on March 8th, 2022. The town council held our budget workshops on March 9th and March 10th. On March 10th, the town council added $170,000 to the pension fund and $8,000 for a comfort dog in the police department. These changes were incorporated into the town council proposed budget. This budget, again, was unanimously approved by the council on March 10th at our budget workshop meeting. The town council then held a public hearing on April 4th, 2022 on the town council's proposed budget and unanimously approved the budget with no additional changes. That budget became the town council's recommended budget. Tonight, the annual town meeting will adjourn to a referendum on April 28th. This year, the recommended general fund budget will require a property tax rate of 29.32 mils. This is an increase of 0.52 mils, or a tax increase of 1.79%. Another way of saying that is $100,000 of assessed property value for your home would equal $2,932 in taxes. The added cost for the average homeowner whose house is assessed at $226,777 is $117.23. As we all know, we all live in Farmington, a great town to work, play, and live and prosper. On behalf of the town council, I would like to thank the town manager and her staff for all the hard work on this budget. Also, I want to thank the Board of Education, their chair, and the entire Board of Education, the Superintendent of Schools, for their hard work in producing a budget that was in line with the town's long-term financial forecast. And I just ask the community to please come out and vote for the budget referendum on April 28th. The budget referendum on April 28th. I will now turn the presentation over to Kathy Blonsky, our town manager, and the Board of Education, who will present their details on this budget.
Good evening. I present for your review the Town Council's recommended budget for fiscal year 2022-2023. The Town Council's budget target, the town's strategic plan, the town's capital improvement policy, and our long-term financial forecast were the policy guidelines at the forefront when formulating this budget. This budget is a maintenance budget that maintains our current high level of service and increases our capital funding levels. I will now review the Town Council's recommended budget. Expenditures. I will now review the expenditure portion of the budget. The total recommended budget for fiscal year 2022-2023 is $121,266,233, an increase of $5,165,703, or 4.45% above the current budget. Town operations. The Town Council's recommended budget is $33,380,320, an increase of $1,063,237, or 3.29% above current expenditures. The General Administration group of accounts increased by 0.26%, Public Safety 2.55%, Public Works 4.82%, Community and Recreation 3.11%. The other group of accounts, 6.08%, for a total of 3.29%. Highlights of the town budget include the following. The public safety account includes the addition of a comfort dog at the police department. Personnel cost included 27 pay periods in the 2021-2022 budget. This budget contains 26 pay periods, which resulted in a significant reduction in personnel accounts. The police fleet account includes funding for 3 new 24-hour patrol vehicles. The Highway and Grounds Operation account shows funding for 4 seasonal summer employees who will be used to supplement regular staff. A part-time dial-a-ride driver position in Community and Recreational Services has been increased to a full-time position. The pension account has been increased due to a reduction in the assumed rate of return on pension investments from 6.875% to 6.625%. This is based on the recommendation of the Retirement Board. Overall, utilities have increased 5.46%, with gasoline and diesel increasing 19.13%. The town will realize savings in many cell phone accounts due to a change in cell phone service provider. Town expenditures by object. I've also separated the budget by object, which includes salaries, benefits, supplies, equipment, contractual, and utilities. The increases for each object are as follows. Salaries have increased 2.02%. Benefits 6.43%, supplies 4.93%, equipment 11.07%, contractual 0.84%, utilities 5.46%, for a total of 3.29%. The recommended total town general fund appropriation is $33,380,320, which is a 3.29% increase above the current budget. Debt. The debt service group of accounts is recommended to increase by $1,034,309, or 12.5%. This group of accounts includes funds to pay for the lease financing obligations, Clean Water Fund loan repayments, and the principal and interest due on existing debt. Also included in this account is a new debt service payment for a $40 million bond issue that took place on February 23rd, 2022. The $40 million issue has a term of 20 years. Most of the bonds, $37.2 million, will be used to finance the construction of the new Farmington High School. The remainder of the issue will finance land acquisition, road improvements, and elementary school improvement projects. The bonds were rated AAA by Moody's Rating Service. Special services. The refuse collection budget includes the cost of collecting and disposing of solid, bulky, and hazardous waste generated by town residents and the town's landfill operation. This budget proposes a rate increase of $18. The annual fee will be $272 per household. Capital improvements. The recommended general fund appropriation to support the first year of the capital improvement plan is $3,881,000. This is above what we have historically been funding for capital projects. Shown on the screen is a complete Board of Education and town capital projects. There is no recommended bonding for fiscal year 22-23. Expenditure summary. The total recommended budget for fiscal year 2022-2023 is $121,266,233, an increase of $5,165,703, or 4.45% above the current budget. I will now call on Kathy Greeter, Superintendent of Schools, to present the Board of Education budget.
Thank you, Kathy. Good evening. It is my pleasure to present the Board of Education's 2022-2023 budget. The budget development process in Farmington is grounded in our strategic improvement documents each year. Our mission, our goals or vision of the global citizen, our framework for teaching and learning, which is our instructional model, our core beliefs, theory of action, and equity framework. This alignment is critical because our financial plan must advance the implementation of these strategic improvement documents. Next slide. This slide provides an overview of the Board of Education's operating budget for the 2022-2023 school year of $74,448,257 with an increase of $2,159,323, or a percent increase over the 2021-2022 budget of 2.99%. Next slide. The first budget driver is salaries, which accounts for 66% of the total budget. The budget increase in the salary line is 3.46% and reflects all negotiated contractual obligations for the coming fiscal year, which are highlighted on this slide. Next slide. The next budget driver is benefits, which accounts for 16.4% of the total budget. There is a 0.93% increase in benefits. This account provides for 100% of expected paid claims and the administration of employee health benefits. All associations have a high deductible HSA with co-insurance. Life insurance and long-term disability costs are also highlighted on this slide. Next slide. Services is the next budget driver and accounts for 14.2% of the total budget. There is an increase of 2.46% in the services series. This account provides for special services, consultation services, and tuition costs for outplacements. The account also provides for major facility projects, K-8 summer school, and technology-based operational systems. Some facility projects were reduced in the 2021-2022 budget and are being reinstated in the coming fiscal year. The account includes costs for student transportation and provides for professional development programming in the areas of teaching and learning. Next slide. The next series is supplies, which accounts for 2.6% of the total budget. The supply series reflects a 3.98% increase. The account provides for facilities and in swimming and ice hockey competition and provides for a purchase of a wide-ranging group of supplies such as instructional, health, custodial, computer, and testing supplies, text and library books, and AV computer materials. And this series also experienced reductions in the 2021-2022 budget and reflects a reinstatement of funding in the next fiscal year. Next slide. The equipment series reflects an increase of 30.25%. This series accounts for 0.5% of the total budget. This account provides for facility and technology equipment. The major driver of this increase is the restoration of funding for technology equipment related to the district's continued full implementation of take-home one-to-one devices. Next slide. Dues and fees, or the 600 series, shows a decrease of 2.53% and reflects 0.3% of the total budget. This series includes memberships to organizations that support our strategic improvement efforts. This account also includes the Town of Farmington's negotiated liability, umbrella, and motor vehicle insurance for the school district. The reduction in this account is due to movement of Aspire funds into the correct supply account. The next slide. Here is an overview of the entire Board of Education's operating budget, all of which I have reviewed within this budget presentation. Next slide. I will now shift to the Board of Education's capital improvement budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Next slide. This slide provides an overview of the Board of Education's capital budget request for the coming fiscal year. Our long-range K-8 facility review, K-12 security recommendations, equipment replacement schedule, as well as custodial input are used to create our 7-year capital plan with updates to that plan each budget cycle. This slide represents our request for the coming fiscal year, the 2022-2023 year. The Town Council's approved 2022-2023 capital improvement budget for the Board of Education is $1,887,000. It is important to note that $1,700,000 for 2 K-4 mechanical ventilation projects are not included in the 2022-2023 capital improvement budget requested by the Board of Education. These 2 projects have been moved to the 2023-2024 capital improvement budget. Next slide. This is an overview of the Board of Education's 7-year capital improvement plan, which represents a long-range view of our capital improvement projects. I thank you for your attention to the Board of Education's 2022-2023 operating budget, as well as our capital improvement budget. Thank you.
The grand list. The grand list is broken down into 3 categories: real estate, personal property, and motor vehicles. The real estate account shows a 0.21% increase. The personal property account shows a 2.51% decrease, and the motor vehicles account shows a 25.22% increase. In summary, the grand list increased by 1.72%, or $64,395,241, for a total grand list of $3,797,616,699. Revenues. I've broken down revenues into 8 categories: other property taxes, licenses and permits, fines and penalties, interest, grants, service charges, others, and Westwood's contribution. In summary, projected non-tax revenues are $11,417,520, or an 18.48% increase over the current year. Recommended tax and mill rate. The recommended general fund budget will require a property tax rate of 29.32 mils, an increase of 0.52 mils, or a 1.79% tax increase, or a $117.23 yearly increase for the average homeowner. In other words, $100,000 of assessed value equals $2,932 in taxes. The townwide referendum is Thursday, April 28th at your usual polling place. Thank you.
All right, I'm back. Does anyone in the audience have questions, comments? Questions? It's hard to see here because of the lighting. Questions? Yes, sir. Name, address.
Sure. Hi, Matt Hutwagner, 4 Deepwood Road. Thanks for everyone who put the presentation together. It was really well done. So just my question is on the 7-year capital plan. during the Board of Education presentation. And I think earlier in the, excuse me, in the process, the ventilation upgrades at the elementary schools. The Board of Ed requested 2 projects this year and 2 projects next year. And those 2 projects were moved back to next year. So I was wondering if you could share your reasoning behind why those were moved back. As we all know, getting out of this pandemic here, ventilation, especially at the elementary schools, should be a priority. There's not even air conditioning there. There's not even flow movement at the elementary school. So that was just 1. And then 2, the rainy day fund, or what's the balance of the rainy day fund here in town? I was just curious, and what percentage of that is to the total budget? Thank you.
Thank you. So do we want to do the Board of Ed question first? Ventilation?
Thank you for that question. During COVID, when we first started with the pandemic, we were required to do ventilation reviews in all of our schools. So we did do that, and we were given recommendations, and we did follow through on those recommendations. The projects that we're proposing are much more comprehensive in, not just fulfilling those recommendations of the review, but really looking forward. So much larger projects. I think what the thought is there's lots of talk at the state level of potential legislation that would actually help offset municipal costs related to ventilation, but those haven't occurred yet. And so I think the thought right now is to bundle the 2 projects that we proposed this year. And then there were 2 projects proposed for next year, and really bundle those in all 4, do all 4. So all the elementary schools would be done together, but propose that as for bonding in the 2023-2024 budget. So that was the thought behind it. And by then we'll have more information on potential funding, maybe at the state or federal level, that would help offset it here offset the cost here in Farmington.
Thank you. And the second part was rainy day fund. What is the balance? Yes? Council for 15?
%, approximately $18 million.
Good on that? Good, yes. Somebody else? 2 people. 3. Okay, yes, sir. Name and address?
Don Doobie, 94 Oak Ridge. First, I'd like to thank the Board of Education and the Town Council for what I consider to be a very fiscally responsible budget, especially considering that over the next few years, we will be seeing substantial increases in taxes as we phase in the new high school. I do have a question for the superintendent. One of the budget items had to do with dues and fees, and something to the effect of associations and affiliations that further the mission of the Board of Education. I'd like to ask if one of those associations is the National Board of Education.
You got it.
No, we don't belong to that association.
Thank you.
Sorry, I take notes. Yes, sir.
Okay, Tim Kelly, 62 Westview Terrace. I think I have 2 questions. The first one should be an easy one. Does the town fund balance, as quoted, include the federal ARPA funds that have been allocated to Farmington?
Did you hear that? Did you get, what's that? No, they do not.
Okay. So my second question is, if I look at the 18 million that we currently have in the town fund, and I add the 7.5 million of ARPA funds, half of which I think it is in town, that comes up to a number over 25 million available to us potentially. So I guess my question is, in the current proposal to raise taxes, we're looking to do a tax levy to bring in an additional 3.8 million. Fundamentally, why would we raise taxes on the residents to bring in 3.8 million if we already have basically 25.8 million in hand?
CJ?
And, you know, maybe just to make this easy, you know, rather than talk about, you know, town bond rating, you know, I think most of us know that we've for decades maintained our AAA bond rating with less than 15 million in the town fund.
The reserve that we have is a moving target, as you know. As the budget increases each year, that number changes each year. So we have had a target of 15 to 16%, and we've been keeping at that. I will mention the bond rating because that is one of the reasons we do continue to keep that AAA bond rating. If we started spending that down to pay for our annual operating cost, we would have a significant hole in next year's budget in which to fill, which would mean instead of something like a 1.79% tax increase, we'd probably have double-digit increases if we started drawing down that money because you have to fill every hole that you dig. As far as the ARPA money, we could also, yes, use that for the budget. The same situation would happen. If we spent that for our regular operating cost, we would have a significant hole next year to make up, and we'd have a significant tax increase next year. Those funds that came in, it was decided by your town council that that should be something. We have a very large, as you saw when they went through the budgets, our 7-year plan on capital improvements. And those are the first places we'll look to spend some of that ARPA money and major projects, things that are more difficult to fund through a regular annual operating budget. So we'll look at big projects for that money, not just to pay this year's budget so we don't have a tax increase this year that we'll have to make up with next year. So
Thank you.
hopefully that answers your question. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
Joanne Lawson, 9 Troutling Pond Road. This is not a specific budget item, I don't think, but I've been reading about the Chef versus O'Neill, and I wonder if that is going to impact our budget. Are we where we want to be with open choice students in town?
Thank you for that question. We are very proud to be a founding district of the Open Choice Program for over 50 years. So Farmington was one of, I believe, 5 districts in the 60s that initiated what was called then Project Concern, and it has evolved over the years into Open Choice. We typically have about 135 students. It does shift every year because students may move out of Hartford and no longer can be part of Open Choice, or they may choose to go to a magnet school because we have choice within this region, both open choice and magnet options. The legislation related to the Chef case would benefit our school district. And at this point, we're waiting for all of that to be finalized. So it's hard to make any adjustments within our budget as we wait for all of that to be finalized. Basically, we would be getting more in the tuition costs that we receive from the Open Choice Program as part of that. There are some benefits also within our high school project that we get additional reimbursement depending upon the number of Open Choice students we have in the high school at a particular point. So, there are lots of different benefits. Of course, having students come to Farmington benefits not only the students from Hartford, but also our own students. So we're really proud of the program. But basically, we will have a financial benefit once all is finalized, and if everything plays out the way that we're reading about in the papers and what we see as the proposal at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Question.
My name is Wendy Saffer, and I'm at 27 Winwood Road. My question involves the high school, the new proposed high school. The total cost is 135 million, 0.6. And town council approved 110, assuming that the state's going to give us the rest. There is a shortfall of between 900,000 and $1 million. So my first question is where is that money? If it doesn't come through the state, I know our legislators are working on it, but if we don't get it, where is it going to come from? Will it come from our rainy day fund? If the budget's already approved, I don't think you can take money away from programs that you all have already talked about. And the other thing is that during the process of, I went to a lot of the webinars, and one of the things that TSKP Studio said was that inflation had been built into the project, except I don't think anybody thought that inflation would do what it's currently doing. So my question is that I don't know how it's possible for the school to stay within even 135 million. Maybe it will. I know it's going to go out to bid, but how does the town address any kind of a shortfall or changing the structure of the school because certain things have to be cut back? The other part of this is, again, with the budget, I'm assuming it may have to go to a referendum, but the town council sent out a survey. And what surprised me in the survey was it wasn't just addressing the 1928 building. It was also asking about other portions, other additions that have been put on. And I thought that that was all part of the original plan, that it was going to basically be demolished. It was just the 1928 building because of a lot of reasons for the town to maybe preserve it, save it. But they were asking about 2 or 3 other buildings. One was, I think, built in 2003. I can't remember the other 2. So again, my question is, I don't understand why that wasn't in the original plan, or maybe it was. But how is the town going to come up with any additional funds to address that?
Is this you or TJ? Yep.
Have to go in proper order. On the high school, we went to referendum and the town approved a limited amount of money. Anything above that, we do not have available to spend on the high school. We would actually have to go to another referendum to get any additional funds for that. You were asking about the $900 and something thousand shortfall. We've been in constant contact with our representatives. We actually testified at the recent hearing. The committee assured us they would do everything they could to make us whole. I believe their words were, we need to keep our promises. We promised you that money. We are going to do everything we can to make you whole. So we're feeling fairly comfortable that will be coming and we won't be missing out on those dollars. As far as inflation, yes, there were some factors worked in for inflation. Whether it meets where we're at right now is a question. The high school building committee has been working nonstop since, well, I could ask the building committee seemingly forever. But what they've been doing is trying to look into the engineering, see where they can cut any costs possible and still have the top quality product that they've been looking for. As far as any lists, things like that, I'll ask the Board of Education if they want to add to anything, but we are limited on what we can spend. We only passed a certain amount of money that the town will contribute. Anything else would have to go back to referendum. So that's for the first part of the question. The next one has to do with the survey that came out. We sent out a survey on the 1928 building. Since we began having that conversation, because as everyone hopefully remembers, when we were first talking about the high school project, there were a lot of questions as to what would happen with that building. Would it just be leveled? Would it be repurposed for something else? In the interim, we've had a number of meetings finding out what the needs are in town for different spaces. And we've had people reaching out to the town council, to the town manager's office, I think some also through the school systems, talking about different needs in town. And one of the things that people brought up, particularly through the rec department, was a large need for gymnasium spaces, things like that. The probate court, which is bursting at the seams right now in our current building, is going to need more space. That's something that could go into the 1928 building. But we decided to, in the survey, just to see what the public felt about all these other needs. Would it make sense? We've got 2 gymnasiums right now that are in very workable condition. Does it make sense to make that part of this project? And if the town, when we start going through and we've gotten the results, it's being worked on by the survey company, so they're going to give us the report later this week. We can see, is this something that the town has an appetite for? And at that point, we would have to see what the costs may be to do that. Anything that would happen with that 1928 building and across the hall from where we are right now would have to go to referendum, and the town would then decide, the townspeople, is this something we're interested in investing in? The initial 1928, there's an absolute need for the space, for different offices, for bringing a lot of our departments that are scattered throughout town in one place. So hopefully that answers your question. Does that?
But if it goes, so what, if I, just to clarify,
Yes,
we cannot go over 110 million. then?
yes,
Okay. Without a
Correct.
referendum, without a
Correct.
referendum.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm Nancy Rethmeyer. I live in Bradford Walk. My question also is regarding the high school. I had reached out to the high school committee and I did not hear back from them. And so I did some digging and I looked through everything. And I learned that the town council, and I know that you were trying to keep costs down, but that the idea of a green roof was let go. I also saw that solar panels and geothermal was also dropped. Having worked at a school for many, many years where they did use geothermal, it was amazingly effective. So it's something I believe strongly in. And I also believe that going forward, considering that youth are the ones who are going to be facing climate change, and who are also the ones who are the most adamant about the need to do something about it, that they would wish that a high school that I hope is going to be around for a long, long time because it's being built very well, would consider things that are going to help reduce emissions and that kind of thing. And if that is absolutely impossible, which I hate to think that it is not possible, what kind of alternative power supplies are you going to use for heating and for electricity? And how can you make that meaningful and related to the needs of our world, of our community, and our students moving forward?
It's a toss up. Okay. Yeah, why don't you start and we'll.
The directive from the town council and the charge for the building committee was to find the most cost-effective project that they could. Some of the things you mentioned, solar paneling, for instance, the cost upfront was a very long-term return on those dollars. So it was deemed prohibitive to try and put in, as you recall, a project that had failed once already, and we were trying to do everything we could to keep that very tight number. I'm a huge fan of geothermal. The biggest problem we have here in Connecticut with geothermal is the ground we stand on. There's a lot of ledge here. You're talking about intensive drilling, and the cost for geothermal here is incredibly prohibitive. I don't recall the direct conversations on the green roof itself. But again, most of these things circle back to the upfront cost and what the return on it is, so we could get the product inside of the building where the students are going to live and learn to be the best that they could possibly have. So there were unfortunately places where we did have to pare back somewhat so we could get the product we needed inside that we felt the public would appreciate and pass.
Okay, and so what kind of energy is going to be used to heat and electrify the building in that case? Is it going to be natural gas and
It's It's a good
relying on
question. I'll have to,
Eversource? I mean, what are we
John,
going to
you
be
got
doing?
anything? Okay, it will be a combination of natural gas, and electricity.
Okay, that's really
Johnny's on the building
disappointing.
committee, so. that's why
It's
I defer to him.
disappointing. If we go out to referendum again, I would ask that we at least throw that out there for people, because there may be a lot of people who would be more than willing to spend a little money to make sure that that happens. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Anyone else with a question, a comment? Question, comment? Yes, sir. Name, address.
How you doing? I'm Greg Luter, 63 Main Street, Unionville. Yeah, I have a issue too with obviously other gentlemen and women before, but the capital improvements. Obviously, it looks like there's a 23.32 increase this year. And I always felt, as I've been to prior meetings over the last 30 years, that that's a big issue that I think we should be concerned about that. And obviously, since we have $25 million in the rainy fund, you know, we should consider using some of those monies. And obviously, we're going to be hit with a huge bond increase next year when, you know, the school's built, you know, which obviously you're not showing that, projected that. So yeah, I'm very concerned because my taxes keep going up. You know, it's easy to say, oh, it's only 1.72 or whatever, you know, but you know, my taxes have gone up threefold since I moved to Farmington. And it's easy to juggle numbers and everything like that. But I think every department could definitely cut from their budget. I mean, we know as taxpayers that it's not easy with inflation, everything going on. So I think that we should really consider trying to lower our bond. Because look at our debt service, it just keeps going up. I mean, looks like projected it's 9,306,656. You know, where's that going to be next year? Where's it going to be? Keep going. You know, why do we have to keep paying huge amount on debt service? That's probably about 8% of the budget. You know, so I think we really should look hard at trying to use some of our monies that we have. You know, and I have a question. I was curious. Of the rainy day fund, how much can the town council or the town manager, you know, just write a check for without, you know, what's the procedure to take money out of the rainy day fund? And is there a limit? That's the question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Somebody here on the side, rainy day fund limit procedure?
I think your first question was about the capital expenditures. One of the things that the council's policy has been over the last few years is, I think 2 years ago, we had a very limited capital expenditure. So that this year they are trying to make up for some of the lost years before that. Historically, Farmington has not really funded their capital expenditure budget. We have a policy that we try to do 2.5% of our operating budget, and many years we don't meet that. The last few years we have been trying to meet it, except for I think 2 years ago where we really reduced our capital, and that's when we had a 0% tax increase. So we are, the council's policy has been to try to support the capital expenditures, roads, schools, buildings, things of that nature. So that is their policy direction. When it comes to the fund balance and the surplus, we don't have, the town council or myself just doesn't have the authority to take the money out. According to the charter, and I just want to check it, it's I think $400,000. That's how much the council can appropriate before we have to go to a town meeting. And after $400,000, you'd have to have a referendum.
400,000, you said? Okay.
Up to $400,000. After $400,000, it would be a town meeting.
Okay.
Let me get it correct for you. Between $200,000 and $400,000, and then after $400,000, you'd have to go to a referendum.
I noticed too, living in Farmington, that the town charter, is kind of designed to pass the budget no matter, even if it gets defeated. Because I've seen in other years that, you go through this process, prepare the budget, it gets turned down, you change the budget, then there's not enough people to come out and vote, so it just passes. So I think we should look forward to maybe in the future to change the town charter so that it is proactive and for the citizens, because I've always had a kind of issue with that. And I think we need to look into that for the future, that it reflects the citizens of the town, because not everybody could come out here. I mean, obviously, how many people are here? 30 people or whatever. How many people live in Farmington? Maybe 25,000 or something like that. So, these are the people that obviously have something to say. But bottom line is you guys, but I've seen in the past, you just force it through the system. And I don't know, I think we should look into the changing maybe the way we vote on passing the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else over here? Comments, questions? Comments, questions? Anything further? No. Anything further here? No. Okay. So I'm going to seek a motion that this annual town meeting be adjourned to referendum vote on resolutions considered pursuant. Oh, hold it. I'm out of order. I take that all back. Is there any other business to come before this town meeting tonight? Any other business properly before? Okay, now my spiel. I'm going to seek a motion that the annual town meeting be adjourned to referendum vote on resolutions considered pursuant to the items in the annual town meeting notice. That vote is to be held on Thursday, April 28th, 2022, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. at the polling places indicated in the notice. I need a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, the motion carries. I declare the meeting adjourned to referendum. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Thank you for your questions and comments.